you an overview of a conceptual model that I am working on regarding the Dutch disease, trying to develop some indigenize the Dutch disease model to the Trinidad and Tobago economy, working through a transition probability matrix to link to competitiveness. So this is a work in progress document that presenting some of the preliminary information from includes outline of a simple synthesis model, ways to strengthen the booming tradable sector, ways to strengthen the non-booming tradable sector, and the way forward. Now, like Professor Rat, who came before me, I'm happy to see a number of secondary school students. Here, we only get to meet you all when at another iteration in the education ladder, but to talk to you all here, I tend to use a lot of cricket in my examples and my commentaries to escape some of the economic discussion with students. And in developing this model, we talk about two sectors in the economy, a tradable and a non-tradable sector, where the tradable sector is in turn divided into a booming tradable and a non-booming tradable sector. The booming tradable sector for a country like Trinidad and Tobago will be the petroleum sector, and the non-booming tradable will be manufacturing on the one hand, and what is called Gina and Dina services or financial services and some of those other services on the other hand. Now, when an economy like ours experience a rise in the price of the main export goods, say crude oil in this case, which heavily correlated with ammonia, methanol, urea, and other prices, you have two types of effects taking place in the economy, a resource movement and a spending effect. The resource movement effect is the rise in the price of crude oil leads to a lot of people wanting to go and work in the booming tradable sector. So they leave wherever they exist, other things constant at this point, and go and sit down outside Petrotrain, or go and sit down outside NP, or go and sit down outside Atlantic LNG, and wait for a job. They take out a pack of cards, they play some wappy, and they wait. If the labor market don't call them, they come back another day. So that is a resource movement effect. And then you have the spending effect. The spending effect is where the government collects some of this money, the booming tradable workers collect some of this money, and they go into the economy and spend the money. For example, the government will introduce make work programs and buildings such as these they would spend a lot of money on. And also the booming tradable workers, they certainly in places like Mayaro, Point Fortin, and Marabella, you'll see on a Friday evening, you'll see them with their helmet, they go into the towns and they spend a lot of money. And have a ripple effect. You see all these small business people come out with the trolley and selling things like pudding and bread and pork and bread and chicken. See vibrant economic activity on a Friday evening in these host communities. Now, I skip a lot of the algebra and graphs and them kind of thing and just come to a summary point here. When you experience a boom in one of your exportable goods, the non-booming tradable sector experience a loss of workers. The loss of workers, if you started off with NBT 0 workers initially, with the resource movement effect, you lose some workers, so the workers in the manufacturing and the export agriculture sector and the tourism sector fall to NBT 1. And with the spending effect, people leave these areas again and go to the non-tradable sector. So that during a boom, you would have financial services prospering. You would find somebody who making pudding to sell to the local market prospering. And people leave areas in which not doing as well and go to work in the non-tradable sector. So the non-booming tradable sector takes a double blow. It takes a double blow because of the resource movement effect on the first hand and the spending effect on the other hand. The first one is called direct deindustrialization. The second one is called indirect deindustrialization. The booming tradable sector overall expands and the non-tradable sector overall expands. Certainly when we take into consideration something called the price elasticity of demand for services. The clearest thing then is that with a rise or a change in the size of the booming tradable sector, the labor market dynamics that unfold is that your non-booming tradable sector contracts. Your booming tradable sector expands, even if it's from 19,000 workers to 19,500 workers. and your non-tradable sector expands. Now, this is where the danger lies. Because if on the board you see in Lara 501 runs not out, and I know the previous speaker could probably relate to that well, or you see 400 runs not out, and you see a total score of 700 or 800 runs, and you know West Indies don't always make that type of runs, you're saying back in your rocking chair and you're feeling nice. You pull out a beer and you sit down there, and that is the real thing. West Indies doing good. The problem is it's superficial in that you have to look at the underlying structure. The underlying structure reveals several problems that come back to haunt you the day that Lara leave the wicket. Now, if you in terms of starting off from a basic point of view, in which goods Trinidad and Tobago economy have a comparative advantage? And this is really to say which goods we strong at, which goods we doing well at in the export market. And anything starting with a 3 or a 5 is the petroleum sector. And you will see 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 512, 522, 554, 562 is the petroleum sector, and 642, 671, and 676 is KSI petroleum sector. So the majority of our area of strength is in the petroleum sector, the booming tradable sector. All right, so there is no big deal. If it is Lara going to decrease, you or Lara going to decrease. And but you don't want him focused too much on bowling, you don't want him focused too much on anything else. Same thing with Chandapal. When Chandapal was there, we gave him the captaincy. That started to create all kind of problems. We take away the captaincy and lay him bat. He moved to number 1 in the ICC rankings. Focus on where you're strong at. So why diversify if the comparative advantage good is benefiting from favorable export prices as oil prices hovering around $100 now? Why diversify? And if you look at the time to exhaustion in oil and the time to exhaustion in gas, starting from 1970 down to the present, you will see it basically topple off a cliff in the case of oil to, well, in the case of gas, certainly from 172.5 years to 9.1, and in the case of oil to 13.3. Now, a second argument is that more diversified economies tend to provide empirical evidence of growth. If it is one of your export goods failing for some reason, the other goods, the stability in the price of the other goods will stabilize the overall export price index and the export revenues and stabilize your growth trajectory. Deindustrialization, a major problem with the Dutch disease or the whole syndrome of having a booming tradable sector is deindustrialization, which I just call the Wavell-Hines effect. That's a good thing here, is the effect on people like Wavell-Hines and Sherwin Campbell when Lara in the crease blazing the bowling. These fellas, Ramnaway Saran going in the crease, he tried to hook, he get caught short of the boundary. These problems emerge. They take life easy. As compared to what Professor before me was saying, are characteristic problems of oil-abundant economies. It's X-inefficiency. Harvey Liebenstein, 1956, where won't come out. You all can't hear? Oh. Another problem is the diversification effort is needed to move away from primary goods to manufacturing goods. I have a whole literature, a vast literature, starting with the work of Hans Singer and Raoul Prebisch in 1948 and 1949, respectively, that show the secular deteriorating trend in primary agricultural goods over the years. And again, building on the Moyne Commission, Arthur Lewis took great issue with the Moyne Commission, and in 1948 and again in 1954, and then crystallizing it in 1963, he argued, here what's going on here. We're not going and be drawers of water and here was a wood again. Mankind need to now move into manufacturing because of the backward and forward linkages that it offers you. Bachata Johnson et al. Also argued that diversification had the capacity to magnify or to reduce the magnifying effects of external shocks, which occurs when you have a dependence on a narrow export base. And myself and Dr. Tiwari, we have a paper that came out in 2010 on the effects of oil on rent seeking. Take, for example, CPEP. In university, we tend to use this joke. In an oil-abundant economy, we introduce a make work program where you basically start work 8 o'clock and finish 7:45. Make work. And that is an indication of rent seeking. There are two distributions here, FT and FT plus 1, showing the index of revealed comparative advantage scores for Trinidad and Tobago economy. And if you look at the distribution, before the boom, you see it consists of three clear areas, non-tradable, non-booming tradable, and booming tradable, in which the non-booming tradable and the booming tradable located to the right are one. One is a neutral point. More than one means that you're doing fairly well. Less than one means it's non-tradable, is a weak sector. If you look at the shape of the two distributions, before the boom and after the boom, you would see that the size of the non-booming tradable sector fell considerably. And in fact, a lot of that non-booming tradable sector would now filter into the non-tradable sector, meaning that a lot of our areas in which we are near or reasonably comparative advantage, we have factored it out of that position and now uncompetitive. Because what happens with a boom is that you have a clamor. Now, first to begin, the booming tradable sector realizes an increase in wages. The non-booming tradable and the non-tradable sector follows pari passu. The overall wage rate in the country rises and the real effective exchange rate appreciates. As the real effective exchange rate appreciates, it becomes more difficult to sell externally. And all these things generally tend to go unnoticed whilst Lara making all these runs. In terms of the change in structure of comparative advantage, I just take 2 years here, 2 snapshot years, 1999 and 2009. In 1999, we had all those sectors there with scores above 1 being sectors that was reasonably strong in the export market. By 2009, look at what happened in terms of gain or loss column. Loss, 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 gain. That is for 122. Loss, 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 gain for 343. Loss, 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 loss. All the rest is loss. Very bad. It's say, and I commented, I'm going to crystallize this now in one summary table. There are 4 states, A, B, C, D. A is a state of comparative disadvantage. B is a state of weak comparative advantage. C is a state of moderate comparative advantage. And D is a state of strong comparative advantage. In this matrix here, 4x4 matrix, you want the values in the upper triangular matrix to be high. You want, for example, from A to be like 0.8, we have 0.0031. You want from A to C to be like 0.5, you have 0.014. And you want from A to B to D to be like 0.2, you have 0.099. Very bad. Very bad. The elements along the leading diagonal show the persistence in the structure comparative advantage. So we have a 91% probability that if you started off in a state of comparative disadvantage in 1999, by 2009, you would still be in a state of comparative disadvantage. And so on. In contrast, you want the values in the lower triangular matrix, which is underneath the leading diagonal, to be low. And we have non-trivial values. We have 0.21 from C to A, from D to A, 0.11, from D to B, 0.22, and so on. So we have the inverse type of outcomes. Now, if you calculate a Herfindahl index score for Trinidad and Tobago for the period 2000 to 2011, you will see the clear need for diversification. Now, I'm glad the secondary school students here because I would have been probably in the same state of mind you was in now when I started university. You would be hearing this. I went back to the first budget speech in 1956, and some of the things I see in the most recent budget speech, just a change in the wording. It's called paraphrasing. We have a need for diversification. It's not happening. Except within the petroleum sector. Let me be clear. Within the petroleum sector, this country has achieved a significant amount of diversification. So the way forward, we need to strengthen the booming tradable and we need to strengthen the non-booming tradable and non-tradable sector. The simple point is this. Whilst you have Lara wrong, milk him. Let Lara go in decrease and let Sarah, one of them or the other in decrease, try to develop, they have the confidence of a super baton talent at the next end. Take your time, play yourself in, gather yourself. I actually did a plot on Lara. Take Lara score on the horizontal axis and Wesley score minus Lara on the vertical axis. And we found a low intercept, much lower than it should be by about 100 runs, and a negative slope. Which is exactly, I could interchange them 2 axes and call it non-petroleum and petroleum. Same type of results you find with the Trinidad and Tobago economy. And the way forward that you would hear some of this commentary recently with the booming tradable sector is greater amount of enhanced oil recovery, because about 60% of we tax revenues still come from that sector. Improving the fiscal regime, and the minister was here, they addressed some of that in the last budget speech. An aggressive international marketing approach like the current Minister of Energy is adopting. We hope to go into aggressive land policy in 2013, and we're going after some offshore acreage. Those things would definitely prosper. If you look at, and we need to focus on oil still. We need to we talk about diversification from a macro as compared to a micro level. We need to focus on oil, because oil have this capacity to generate a lot of economic rents and a lot of oil windfall. And as you can see there, we're heavily dependent on the petroleum sector, so that it's not easy to move away from the petroleum sector straight away. If you look at SICC 3 and 5 exports as a percent of total exports, which is petroleum exports, in 2011 is about 87.2% of total exports. Strengthening non-booming tradable sector. Yeah. Strengthening non-booming tradable sector, which is the sector that most other people here will be interested in. The first thing is the pro-cyclicality of fiscal policy, government expenditure and transfers. We went along a pathway in which we just started to spend resources as the oil money came in. And in fact, that is contrary to good practice economic theory. We should have actually been hiving out a lot of that money and put in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, which is about 4.2 billion now. That should really be about 20 billion US dollars. That is about, it's substantively off the mark. We're spending a lot of money on hosting big international conferences and whatnot, and we send the money sideways. And look at the competitiveness index. I heard somebody speak about this morning. It's bad in relation to the other countries in the region, and that is where we should be spending some of the money. If you look at the ease of doing business index, and I'm sure other speakers will talk about that, you will see Trinidad and Tobago really behind, and that is where we should be spending some attention. And also trying to develop a framework in which to encourage entrepreneurship in Trinidad and Tobago. And two things stand up along in terms of this model here. It's still in the development phase, but two success stories, I think, is MyPed and the localized economic development strategy. MyPed is a microfinancing arrangement that BPTT started in Mayaro. To date, they have already created about 25 jobs in that community, 2,500 jobs in that community using this microfinancing arrangement. That does come with microfinancing, it also comes with a training aspect. Because a lot of the things that the small entrepreneurs don't have is the relevant trainings to go along with the ideas. And then localized economic development. This trickle-down approach to development not working. We need to invert that and start from the bottom, make more acute use of indigenous factors of production, and let it work its way up. Crime is a terrible problem in this economy. Unless we deal with crime, as a businessman, unless we deal with crime, I'm not going to invest. Simple. I wonder if we're looking at the wrong place. The global economy by 2050 going to change face, it's going to change structure. You know, one of the things that I always say is we need to woo and fawn upon foreign capital. One of the things I think we need to do now is to woo and fawn upon foreign capital from the trim brick economies. Turkey, Russia, Mexico, Brazil, India, and China. And we need to deal with the petroleum subsidy. The government certainly made a start, and I hope that start was really an announcement effect, as we say in economics. We started off with premium, but I hope the announcement effect really transcends into super and diesel, because we simply cannot afford it. This one here will take an entire lecture. This gate, I know it's a secondary school students here. Gate resources consist of A and B. Lump sum universal funding change the distribution of income from the YR, or the inner line, to the outer line, parallel to itself. So it just changed the intercept, not the slope of the distribution of income. If it is, this person needs $5 to go UE, and $4 and $3 and $2 to go UE, after you do a means test, and I give them that money, that is enough money, they would go UE and everybody will be happy. But if I give everybody $5, then where you end up in? You end up with rituals coffee on campus, $27 for a cup of coffee, with nice luxury leather chairs that students certainly don't need at this point in time. You end up with about 10 to 15 shops right around each other forming a mall. You end up with high-rise luxury, almost 5-star hotel, right outside campus for students to stay. The lump sum investment directed at tertiary level education has now been turned into a lump sum consumption outlay. And B over A plus B is the wasting aspect. We need to take dramatic action and go back to A funding alone. Dollar for dollar plus a means test. And the way, I remember, and it's a good thing that Professor Dong is hosting chairing this session. In 2007, he did some work for the Inter-American Development Bank and used the real loan rate, real GDP, to model unemployment behavior in Trinidad and Tobago. If you go to do that now, Professor Dong, it wouldn't work. Because the correlation between the real GDP growth rate and unemployment rate between 1991 and 2012 is about minus 0.05, a very small number. But if you look here, what really driving on, we have an economy that characterized by 4 years, and well, 3 years of negative growth and 1 year of stagnation. So the last 4 years, we basically in a recession. 11 out of the last 18 quarters was negative. We're in a recession. Regardless of what people say, we're in a recession. And what you find is that we're in a recession with full employment, unemployment. So the A-level students who do in economics, go back and ask the teachers about that. They will probably have a hard time answering you. A recession with full employment, unemployment. And that is simply because transfers and subsidies. Anywhere you go, it have jobs advertising, people looking for workers, but transfers and subsidies in the make work programs, meaning that people could go and there's a university joke, don't misquote me. People could go and start work 8 o'clock and finish 7:45. So they're not looking for other forms of employment. Way forward, hauling wasteful spending and respect the fundamentals of the Hartwick rule. The Hartwick rule is if you have non-reproducible capital in the ground, take it out, put it in a bank, use the stream of income from it, and put it into reproducible capital. Efficiently so. Not to waste some of the money via gate. Gate fancy and nice, but you need to haul it in. You need to rein in CPEP. You need to color me orange, to color me blue. You need to haul in these things. Let the state take the lead in well-researched, well-planned areas. Lewis was clear in saying that. Lewis was saying if it is the private sector not doing it, let the state take the lead. And look at the massive point this estate we have based upon Louisiana philosophy. Strengthening the EDB. To me, one of the greatest failure of governance in Trinidad and Tobago is the Economic Development Board. The Economic Development Board should be the lead think tank institution, paralleling the think tank institutions that led Japan out of the bombings and that led Singapore and Taiwan out of the state under development. It is where the idea should come. Form an independent entity. Hire 10 economists, perhaps myself, pay me $20,000 US a month, and let me just think. And I'm being serious, eh? Ease labor market tensions in the country. Find a way, sit down and talk. That TCL strike alone. The TCL strike alone would perhaps mean that in 2012 we will have overall negative growth rate. We look at the Tobago tourism product. Tobago in a crisis. The Tobago economy needs special attention at this point in time. I know my time up. You need to definitely look at the diaspora because other forms of capital not flowing into the Caribbean, and you need this form of capital. And you know, as a student of economics, we need to go back to basic economic planning in Trinidad and Tobago. The professor before me mentioned human capital formation, which I definitely endorse. And apart from that, you know, we go back to the rules of SATA, 2 cornerstone rules from SATA, Lewis, where he said, 1, every inquiry into industrialization must bring in the market. We pick 6 sectors, maritime, fashion, 6 sectors we pick. And I'm not convinced that these 6 sectors is in alignment with the comparative advantage. And the second thing you say is to produce those manufacturers intensive in the use of your natural resources. Yes, we could go into ICT, you know, and that is a good place to go. And certainly ICT go build upon we human capital fabric. I think it's easier for Lara to play golf than to play football. That is what I would say. I think it's easier with Lara starting off skills to move into golf than to move into basketball or football, because you go into an area like Hosein, them would say, closer to where his natural skills reside. The cost of moving away from batting into playing basketball is enormous. But perhaps the cost of moving away from batting into golf is smaller. Thank you.